and welcome to CCS Virtual Productions. I was looking into the other day to get one of my old pan-tilt zoom cameras to work with Aximmetry and especially the tracking side of things. And I thought I'll get it down here in this little step by step. I'm not saying that everything that I've done is correct and right, but it works well for me. And I'm quite happy with the results. Let's have a look at it. So here is my remote camera that I'm using. It's an old brand camera. I've had it for a couple of years. It's 1080p. It has a 20 times zoom, equivalent to 5.5 to 110 millimeters. Ethernet out and 3G SDI. Here I'm connecting it through the Ethernet port and power the camera through power over Ethernet, which is very convenient. And obviously then connecting the 3G SDI port to my Blackmagic Design capture card on my Aximmetry computer. I'm not going to go through the IP settings and so on. I will assume that you can get the camera to work in your system with the necessary networking needed. So here I'm going into the settings of my network camera and I'm finding the network port settings. Especially important for us is the Visca port. I put that to 1259. Just, put whatever you want there and remember that number because we are going to use that very soon. Next thing will be opening Aximmetry and as usual, as you probably are familiar with, set your video outputs as you like them. And then you have to go into Device Mapper, and in Device Mapper you go to Camera Tracking. Manage Devices, you can find the Visca protocol. That's the one you want. Go into that and add a new profile. In the settings here you choose TCP/IP, profile PTZ optics, and then you have your host name, which is the IP address of your camera. In my case it was 192.168.10.30. Remember the port from the camera setting, this is where you write it in. In my case it was 1259. And then there's also a camera ID, which is used if you want to use more than one camera. In our case, we don't need that. So I'm going to erase this now because I've already done a profile there on top. There it is. I press apply, okay. And then I will go back into Device Mapper and Camera Tracking. And under profile number 2, I will choose the profile that I just created. On the right there's also a setting for calibration profile, but we don't have to worry about that right now. So with that you can actually quit from this dialog and instead head to Aximmetry DE Basic Calibrator. This is where we are going to continue the calibration and the setup. As usual you get the initial video outputs. And in the Device Mapper now you go down to Camera Tracking, and under Profile 2 this is where you pick up the profile that you created earlier. There it is. And the calibration profile, as I said, is a later question. Continuing on, you want to just check your settings in Calibrator. So you go on a tracking device, you want to have the map that you just created, same thing for the zoom device, and obviously the video input that you're using. You want to now add a new profile, a new PTZ profile. It's a very inspiring name. There you go. And the next thing you want to do is to click on Properties up in the right corner. Here the first setting that you were asked for is the sensor width of your camera. I did some research and I found out that mine is 5.18 millimeters. And the next setting you need to do is the height from the floor of the camera. In my case it was 190 centimeters. There is really no other settings here that you need to worry about. And as you saw, as soon as I clicked OK, I got the grid and the virtual marker. my tracking is working. You see on the screen down on the right all the information from the camera being fed into the calibrator software. Now you need to add a profile, and the first thing there you can see up on the left corner it says zoom, and it's the same number as the camera is reporting back to the software. I need now to put in the focal length, which is in my case 5.5 millimeter, which is the zoomed out position of the camera. Just make sure to pan a little bit right and left to see that it matches up nicely. You also want to check your drifting on the tilt axis, and you adjust that by adjusting the aspect ratio. Just, do small steps, tilt up and down, adjust, check the drifting until you are satisfied with the results. So now we're ready then with our first calibration point, and it looks quite good. Obviously nothing is happening on the zoom axis, and that's what we're going to do now. And I zoomed all the way in here to just check what the number is reported back from my camera when it is all zoomed in, which is 1.0. So my zoom travels from 0 up to 1.0. We're going to add 3 calibration points. One at 0, one at 0.5, and one at 1.0. So what I'm doing now is that I'm positioning my zoom manually on the camera to 0.5. I'll add a new calibration point. And here is when you have to adjust your focal length manually. By panning left and right and using a virtual marker as a reference, you adjust incrementally until you're satisfied. So somewhere there should be fine. Yeah. Okay. The aspect ratio you just keep the same as in the previous calibration point. Yeah, so next thing is to zoom in the camera to maximum, 1.0, and repeat the same procedure. Add a calibration point. Use your focal length settings to adjust any drifting in your image compared to the virtual marker. Obviously, when the camera is so close as it is now, you're not going to experience much movement, but still, yeah, that looks okay for now. Again, the aspect ratio the same, and that, okay, brilliant. Yeah, it works. I'm zooming in and out, tilting, and the tracking follows quite okay the position of the lens in the camera. What I also did was to add some depth of field in the tracking on the zoom axis, and this is done by adding focus distance in the calibration points. And to be honest, I really don't know what the numbers should be here. I tried different things, discovered that very high numbers work very well for me. So I ended up having at the first point 0, second point 3000, and third point 6000. Obviously, if any of you know exactly how the numbers are put in here, feel free to leave a comment. Yeah, and obviously we can't see the depth of field yet here because we don't have a background to check it against. So now we close the calibrator and we go back into Aximmetry Composer. Go back into Device Mapper again, and here now you go to Camera Tracking, and here you can now add the profile to your second position, the profile that we did, which was called the new PTZ profile. Remember earlier I told you that we will put this in there. There it is. Apply, and now we can click Start. Here I'm using a mixed cam compound. That's obviously not needed. A tracked cam is enough. just that I was working on this project. It was easiest to just use it. Go to your tracked inputs, check your inputs to see that the tracking device is the correct one, the zoom device is the correct one, and yeah, that should be it actually. I'm just going to switch camera to my tracked camera, which I have on camera number 4, and test a little bit backwards and forwards. Yeah, it's going. Check the zoom. Now you can actually see the depth of field being generated there in the background, and quite cool. Yeah, and remember we added 3 calibration points in the calibration software, and what I've done after this video already is that I've added 5, which gives a little bit of a better result. Yeah, so thank you for watching, and I hope that this helped somebody a little bit anyway. And yeah, see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.